It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. From Fantha Tracks TV, this is Good Morning Tatooine!
Good morning, Tatooine indeed. We're back once again with your weekly recap of all this week's Star Wars news. And with Ahsoka on Disney Plus, we'll be reviewing that show as well. So what have we got coming up on this week's show? First up, we're going to be talking SecretLab skins, Ahsoka's chair that's been released. We'll be looking at Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny on digital. Tales from the Galaxy's Edge Enhanced Edition has just had its price lowered on PlayStation VR2. Something very cool and unusual is that the slippers of Peter Cushing have gone up for auction. We'll be checking them out. You can now pre-order The Mandalorian Season 1 and 2 on Blu-ray Steelbook, which is the first time Star Wars streaming content has come to digital media. We'll be checking out the visual effects from The Mandalorian's latest season, Season 3. We'll be going over the product releases from the Hasbro Pulse fan stream, which revealed all sorts of Ahsoka content this past week. And as I said, we'll be checking out Part 3, Time to Fly of Ahsoka from Disney Plus. And to talk about that and much, much more from FanthaTracks.com, Ross Hollebon. How are you, Ross?
Brian, I am fantastic and so excited to be here. It's fun to be with all my folks that I get to write with and for.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the show. This past week, obviously, the dominating news has been the latest episode of Ahsoka. We'll be talking on that towards the end of the show, but your general thoughts to kick off on the episode?
I'm so happy with where it's going. There are elements that, maybe some people are saying it's a little bit slow, but I'm okay with that build up. I expect a payoff to come from it. That may not have happened with Secret Invasion with Marvel, but I'm going to trust Filoni and the gang on Lucasfilm with Disney Plus.
Yeah, I think we kind of saw this kind of general feeling with Andor, and that had the kind of slow, continuous building. I think we're getting that with Ahsoka as well. So yeah, I get exactly what you're saying there. Let's kick off straight into the news because we've got a few news items to cover this week, and we'll kick off straight away with SecretLab chairs. They do skins for their chairs, and they've just released an Ahsoka one, which is kind of cool. I like the colouring. Obviously, it's got Ahsoka's emblems on there. I sit on a SecretLab seat right this very second, so it's something that would suit me very fine. And I think I'm right in saying that this is a first chair from Secret Labs with Star Wars content on it, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong in that. But yeah,
I'm not aware of much, but that looks amazing, and I would expect you to get it. And I definitely know some people here that over here in the States, some friends that I know in California and on the East Coast that are probably itching to get that right now.
Yeah. Apparently only takes 3 minutes to put on, but then it said it only took 40 minutes to build the chair, and it took a good few hours for me. So that part might not be so true, but it's actually great to see Ahsoka products popping up everywhere at the moment. There's always this delay in toys, obviously, when it comes to release around TV programs. You're always looking at kind of a year after the show's been on there that the toys come out. So it's great to see Ahsoka content coming out available to people that want to buy it, because it's obviously been a character that's existed for many years. And so there's ways and means in which you can bring the content out now that doesn't have a sort of negative impact or spoil the show in any way.
Yeah, and it's so cool with her markings and how people know, probably especially from her universe, and how much Ashley Eckstein's put out with those markings and with those design elements that we know is Ahsoka. So it's really cool.
Yeah, definitely. Next up on the news front, we have from Lucasfilm, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is reached digital kind of had there's no way to hide it. It had a disappointing cinematic run. So it's now available to buy on digital, and later this month I think it comes to streaming as well. I really dug the movie. I don't know if you had a chance to go and see it in the cinema, but yeah, I really dug the movie. I didn't get a lot of the criticism it had thrown at it. I thought it was a solid Indiana Jones outing, and it's always great to see Harrison Ford on the big screen.
Yeah, no, I saw it here in the theater. I very much enjoyed it. It definitely wasn't the best movie I've seen, but it was Harrison being Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
And there were new characters built in. There were those mysterious moments and those, some surprises in there. So I definitely enjoyed it. I was only going to see it once in the theater, but I will definitely watch it on digital or once that is streaming as well.
Yeah. I'm not one to buy content, I think, digital content. I like physical media, which we'll be talking about for the Mandalorian just in a moment. But so this is kind of one that I pass over, but I'll be checking it out when it comes to streaming services, definitely later this month. And hopefully it does come to physical media, because I've got all the rest of the Indiana Jones and Blu-ray. I'd love to have this one as well. So yeah, definitely one I think a lot of people will be picking up when it hits streaming services later this month. On the gaming front, Tales from the Galaxy's Edge Enhanced Edition has had a big price drop on PlayStation VR2. PlayStation VR2 obviously out now for the PS5. I've not had a chance to play this game, but the trailer makes it look fantastic. I've never really been convinced by VR content. I've tried a few of the systems. Don't necessarily buy into the immersive experience of it too much. But are you much of a gamer yourself, Ross?
Not VR. And I try to get into some of the other stuff. I'm just not that good at it. Like, I love, like, if it's the holidays and one of my nephews gets one of the games, I'll sit there sometimes just with a drink for like an hour and watch and drink like I'm watching my own movie, just because the narrative's so good and some of the things to watch are so cool. But the fact that this is so tied into Galaxy's Edge as well makes it that much more interesting to me.
Yeah. I remember when Vader Immortal came out in London, in one of the shopping centres, they had like a physical location you could go to, and there was actually a sort of you put on the outfit, you picked up the weapon and so on, so there was actually like a physical element to it as well. And I remember doing that and having a lot of fun doing that. And I think there's maybe for the VR there's more value in that kind of experience where there's like a physical element to it as well.
Yep. Yeah, I could absolutely see that. And again, experiential. Like, that's, I mean, if Disney's listening at all, make that off to the side at Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah.
And let the virtual reality game happen while you're there.
Yeah, that would be a really cool idea, just to have that kind of experience. I've never myself made it to Galaxy's Edge. As yet, lockdown and all that kind of things kind of delayed any attempts to get over, but I'm hopefully heading to New York in October, and part of the plan is to make a flying visit to Florida on the way there and try and at least get one day at the park, I think.
Yeah, I would love it if you could. It's fun. I've been fortunate enough to go and visit in Orlando as well as out in Anaheim. So I've been able to see both styles of it, and Galaxy's Edge is a great time, and any fan that I know that's been there has absolutely loved it.
Yeah, definitely. And when we talk about immersive experiences, that's what the park was kind of designed for. It was birthed off the idea of what we have in the UK, and it's just come to America, I think, in terms of secret cinema, where you literally go dressed up as a character, attend a random warehouse somewhere where they've got it entirely set up like they did the Star Wars one, the whole world was set up like a Star Wars universe. You have fun, you have a drink, have some food, and then you watch the film, and it's kind of interactive elements to it as well. It was a lot of fun, and I think Galaxy's Edge kind of originated out of that kind of idea and that experience. And so I look forward to the fun of visiting a Disney park and it being Star Wars themed. And so yeah. Next up in the news, something kind of bizarre, but really cool, I think. Peter Cushing's slippers. Obviously, very famous tale about how he asked George Lucas if he could wear slippers on set because he didn't like the leather boots, and the crew made a little kind of 12-inch model of his character and a little pair of slippers for him, and it kind of became a little iconic story of Star Wars and cinema, and they're now coming up for auction with an estimate of anywhere between £15,000 to £20,000. A little bit out of my price range for a pair of slippers, but what do you think of this item?
For the people that have the money for this, and I'm thinking Paul Allen of IBM fame, and the collection he had before he passed away that he has on display in Seattle, this would be the sort of thing that shows up there where it's just like, oh my God, someone actually did this. I wouldn't do it just because I wear a 14, so they wouldn't fit. But I love it. What obviously Peter Cushing, unbelievable. Tarkin is a character in every part of Star Wars that Tarkin shows up in is so unbelievable. So just any sort of tie to him is such a great thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's just got that such a fun story behind it as well. And yeah, it's kind of that. It would be, if you could afford them, I think it'd be one of those amazing talking pieces you would have in your front room.
Yeah.
Probably something more affordable for everybody, and something everybody's been wanting for their front room, perhaps, is the Mandalorian Season 1 and 2 in Steelbook Blu-ray. Kind of came out of surprise a little bit. Here, everyone's been kind of, I think, wishing for this. Everyone kind of likes to have kind of something for the collection, a little bit of physical media. And I guess it was always kind of expected that Disney Plus just wouldn't go there, but not just in Star Wars, but across their brands. They've announced steelbooks this past week for a number of shows. Not everything, but it's a start. I think it's certainly their most successful shows they're going with to start with. But you would hope that it would build from there, and other series will follow. But The Mandalorian, was it a show you enjoyed? Well, it'd be
absolutely. Like it was that new chance for people to get involved in Star Wars.
Yeah.
And it became this element of almost like that zeitgeist moment as you're getting Baby Yoda. And that is where so many people are like, oh, who's this little guy who may not have cared at all before? So that aspect and bringing more people in, and as much as may the force be with you is such an important saying, because of the Mandalorian, so many people put things with "this is the way."
Yeah.
And that is like that. It's that new way to let someone know that, oh yeah, I'm part of this and I enjoy this as well. And what a great character, what a great storyline. And now that Dave and John are putting everything together, it's fun to see what's going to come out of the fact that that first story was so great.
Yeah. I think even more so than the films under Disney's sort of era, I think The Mandalorian kind of reached the general public more than anything. You know, it became part of pop culture a little bit, where you kind of felt that, yes, all the films that Disney have released have had publicity and have reached the mainstream media. The Mandalorian had more of a cultural impact, it kind of felt.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was the performances, it was the timing, it was a perfect storm and just a way for, us diehard fans to have something to really dig into. But it became that much more mainstream because of it. So that's fun. And it's been so wonderful and so rewarding as a fan to see how much more has grown out because of The Mandalorian.
Yeah. Paul Naylor making a comment there that he doesn't even have a Blu-ray connected anymore, streaming's so well established. So they might not do the business some people expect. I don't know if my Blu-ray is connected. I definitely have a Blu-ray player sat there. But I'll still buy the steelbooks, I think, just because I've got to have that physical media. Is it something you'll pick up the steelbooks, or are you locked into the streaming ideology now?
Oh, no. I want the physical copy.
Yeah.
I mean, there have been so many shows that have, not that Disney Plus would necessarily do this, but they've pulled stuff already as well. Yeah. So if this is something that you really want, I'm definitely going to get these. I do want the hard copy of it. I wouldn't buy the hard copy of everything, but this is so iconic and something that, you could just, even if you have to use the Blu-ray because streaming's out or something like that, you could just let it ride and enjoy the whole season if you want to disappear for a day.
I do now wonder if this is the model Disney Plus are going to go for, that after a number of years they'll start to allow their successful shows they think that have a market to go to physical media, whether the next step becomes that they allow it to go to linear TV after a period of time as well, find a new audience that way, and this almost complete the circle. So people are watching season 1 of The Mandalorian on, let's say, ABC, for example, and so subscribe to Disney Plus because they want to see season 4.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It seems a sensible approach now. I think that I've had this complication with Disney Plus from the start, and that I never necessarily believed in the model because Disney did network TV so well that I always had sort of led the argument from the start it's going to be hard for them to reach profitability, and I think they're finding that. Certainly their initial target was 2025. It's looking like it's going to be close, but they've kind of got to find a way to find a balance of how do we attract people to Disney Plus, how do we lower the costs of Disney Plus, and how do we build an audience base. And I think, providing physical media, potentially letting stuff go out and license to linear, and I think we'll maybe see that. You mentioned the content that's been removed. Willow, obviously Lucasfilm property is a prime example. It wouldn't surprise me to see that pop up on network TV somewhere, and potentially good success on a network TV for a show. Could see it being revived.
Yeah, and that's what it's going to take. And sometimes it's the right time and right place, and right leadership in place as well that says, "Hey, we're going to take a chance on this."
Yeah.
But we know that Disney proper right now is looking for a lot of different ways to take care of their stakeholders. So they're kind of looking that way first, but hopefully they keep that very safe eye on the consumers and the ones that make the products valuable in the first place.
Yeah, definitely. Next up on the news front, we're still talking The Mandalorian, but looking at season 3, the visual effects of season 3. In fact, we had a little sort of behind the scenes, behind the magic look at this, and I think this is all to do with award season coming up, and ILM are highlighting the work that they've done on certain properties, and hoping that encourages people to vote for them in the upcoming Emmys, for example. But it's been great to see the different shows, the layers and the depth of the work, because sometimes we've become sort of a little bit blind to the special effects and the depth of the work.
Yeah, I mean, you take it for granted when it's that good and continues.
Yeah.
But it's going to be something where I think we'll talk about it a little bit with Time to Fly with Ahsoka, but the advances even from this season of The Mandalorian to Ahsoka right now, there are even some big jumps, it seems like. So, we're kind of we got spoiled by the volume and the storytelling that it allowed and just the groundbreaking elements that it is. But they're just going to keep pushing and growing, and that's the super exciting part about it. And I'm excited to see all of this, and hopefully this is going to win some awards.
Yeah, because I guess if we cast our eye back to season 1 of The Mandalorian, and we hadn't really heard of the volume when the show launched, it wasn't, I think, until quite a number of episodes into the series that they started talking about the volume and the work that they were doing there. It kind of blew my mind away because you just didn't realise what you were seeing. You didn't realise that these guys were on stuck in effectively a small set surrounded by giant screens. Just didn't register at all until they pointed it out. Then you start hunting to see if you can kind of spot where it's happening, you know.
No, that the magic of Hollywood, and that's where we got getting those ILM specials and everything they've shown, and how it's, you know, impacted things from Star Wars to Jurassic Park to Avatar and everything in between. We're very fortunate to see these advances that we're seeing and getting to see them so often.
I think as well that Star Wars is at its best when it's pushing the boundaries of technology as well. And I think a lot of the success for The Mandalorian can be put towards that, because you're starting to see things on screen, and especially on TV, for a TV budget, things that should be impossible happening on screen.
Yeah, and just how many other people want to adopt it, and that's where true evolution comes from and advancement comes from. Is, oh, they're doing this, how can I do it this way? And I mean, you look at something like the Oppenheimer film that's out, and just kind of that was literally an arms race. But even in entertainment, it's the arms race of technology. How can I do this better and hopefully cheaper at some point so I can create more?
Yeah. And it's interesting in that you start to see more and more people talking about technology like the volume, but almost manipulating it to make it sound like the work that they're doing is equivalent to the volume. I noticed it recently, and it was a simple scene of a vehicle, and they had the special effects to add in the backgrounds of the moving vehicle in the background, and they were referring to that as being like the volume, where that technology has existed for many, many years. And so it's almost become like this cultural thing now, where people want to aspire to what the volume's doing and push its envelope a little bit further. And I think that's great for the future of TV. And obviously, you know, finances is a big discussion at the moment on with the various strikes that are happening in America. Everyone's looking to save that little bit of money, become more profitable, and so effectively the talent can get the money instead of it going, whether it be in special effects or other elements. So I think costs are going to be a huge thing moving forward, and platforms like the volume can provide them the ability to achieve things at a different budget level, I think.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the entrepreneurial mindset that's going to happen in someone's basement or out in their garage, where they've put this stuff up. Like, oh yeah, I just recreated the volume this way. And people are so smart and go after things, and they love that challenge. So the idea of that happening, and as that happens, then the studios just push a little bit more. Okay, what else can we do now? So we're, as fans, we're the beneficiaries of that.
Yeah, over on YouTube there, Kingdom of Weird making the comment that the special effects on Mando Season 3 were better than Jurassic World 3. And I think that's, you know, at the very least they're comparable. And I think that's the huge benefit of TV going forward. And it's only going to get better. And I think you're starting to see certainly directors and talent who were effectively, historically, always been film actors, film directors, started moving into the medium of TV now, where they can achieve what they want to achieve on screen on that different medium. Mr. Newbold as well, also making a comment. Visuals in Mando Season 3 were incredible, so well chosen and executed. Yep, definitely agree with that as well. Next up on the news front, this past week we had Hasbro Pulse's latest live stream, where they announced a whole host of new Ahsoka figures. Some of it coming later this year, and some of it coming towards the end of next year. We can have a look through them all. First up in the Black Series, Ezra Bridger, teased so far in the Ahsoka TV show, but it seems inevitable that we're going to meet him before the end of the series, or at least season 1. You would hope he's going to pop up at some point. He's released there on Black Series. Are you much of a action figure collector at all, Ross?
Oh yeah, no, I've got a closet over here that's packed. I've got a basement that I get asked numerous times of, hey, can we get rid of some of these now? So I need to be smart with my purchases. Pretty much if it's Sabine, I'm going to add it. And then otherwise, it's kind of like, okay, what makes sense at this point? But it's cool to see Ezra with the green lightsaber, with that figure, and how that could impact the Ahsoka series.
Yeah. Also coming up later this year, you've got Chopper as well on the Black Series. The HK-87 assassin droids. And I think people will be delighted to have Morgan Elsbeth as well, because she appeared with the Book of Boba Fett, is when she first appeared, I think. So one that's been missing from collections for a while, I think. And as much as I hate droids are my thing that I hate. Hu Yang has been a highlight of Ahsoka so far, for me. Love David Tennant's work.
Tennant has been amazing with him.
But yeah, it's he's effectively one of the main characters, and he's kind of avoided all the sort of publicity of the show. I guess because he is providing a voice rather than being there physically. But yeah, he's been a lot of fun and sort of held together certain scenes and really enhanced the performances of the actors round about him as well. So yeah, he could be a popular purchase, I think, this Christmas. And
yeah, I think that one very much will be, as well as Marak, and especially as we get to know more about this Inquisitor-esque character.
Yeah. Matt Booker pointing out he's a Scottish droid, so it's a winner. I'm not sure if it'll convince me to buy a droid, but yeah, definitely enjoyed it. Marok, yeah, as you say, the mysterious kind of character. Everyone's speculating, is he more than just Marok? Do you have a personal opinion on that one?
That is one that I am staying so far away from, because I don't want to get my hopes up.
Yeah.
I would love a great surprise, or it could just be some rando person underneath. Either way, it was cool to hear a voice last episode, and I look forward to seeing more of the fights, and maybe we'll even get it in that cool red forest this coming week.
Yeah. The lots of theories out there going from Ezra. I said it could be Thrawn. Just for it'd be funny if they were looking for him and he was there all the time.
Well, and Thrawn can fight, so that wouldn't surprise me too much.
People have suggested Starkiller. Dave Filoni, a big fan of Star Wars video games, and Sam Witwer is providing voices in the series, so could he potentially be providing the voice for Starkiller? I personally would like for it to be Snoke. And Snoke to get his sort of facial injury during the series would be kind of cool.
Well, and does he do such a good job at accomplishing all the goals that he earns the gold robe?
Yeah,
Is that
something
how
like
it would
that.
work if he was snug?
Something like that. I don't think it's going to work based on purely on dimensions and size of the character potentially, but yeah, I just like the fun idea. Paul Naylor making the comment there that it could be an Anakin clone. It would be appropriate if it was a clone of someone, um,
Yeah.
with it being um, uh, effectively Thrawn being a Timothy Zahn character and he being a big part of clones being in his series. Um, Mr. Newbuild, Marok is obviously Therm Scissor Punch. A fair shout.
He would need that different spacesuit, right,
Yeah,
to fit
yeah,
everything the right way.
definitely. As well as Black Series releases, Hasbro also announced releases for the Vintage Collection. We've got HK87 Droid as well coming this fall, and Hera Syndulla, who's looking a lot more like her live action character than potentially the animated character
Yep.
in this form.
Yeah,
Um,
that one looks great.
yeah, skipping too quick there. Yep, definitely looks a great looking character. And as I mentioned earlier, Morgan Elsbeth is also coming to the Vintage Collection as well. And I think I saw someone mention in the comments that they were looking forward to characters in the Retro Collection from Ahsoka. Um, so you can get Ahsoka herself, Morgan Elsbeth once more, the HK87 Assassin Droid. You mentioned Sabine Wren, Hera Syndulla, of course Chopper, and interestingly Marok as well. So obviously Marok has been given quite early in the process to Hasbro's. I don't know if it means it's a character of significance or whether it's because they can give the design to Hasbro and it doesn't really leak who Marok really is, potentially. So a lot of releases, half them this year, half them next year. Any that would make it into your collection?
Oh, so Sabine Retro will definitely be added. And from there I'll figure out, like, I love the Black Series line. So that's, the prices went up a little bit, so I'm a
Yeah,
little bit like before where I'd be like, oh, I'm going to go out and get two. Now I'm just like, I'm going to wait a while, and I'm very selective about which ones I add now.
yeah. I'm not a big. I don't really collect action figures, to be perfectly honest, but I have noticed that the price points are squeezing quite heavily between sort of three lines. There's not much difference now between retro, vintage, and Black Series, and the prices are all rising. So I feel for anyone that's a completist out there, because it's very painful. Like you say, I think you've got the best approach to pick what you really like.
Yeah, because there's such a cool. They put out a dual Cad Bane and why am I not coming up with it? Cobb Vanth
Okay, yeah,
dual Black Series pack, but it's like $55.
yeah,
And I'm just like, I'd love to add it. I was like, but I'm not paying that for it.
yeah, definitely. And a lot of these are going to end up in clearance as well, so the prices will drop spectacularly quite quickly. So if you can hold out, you may get a bargain somewhere down the line. We've spoken a little bit about Ahsoka already. We can jump into talking more in depth on the show. A great episode, I thought, overall. And we kind of kicked off with Sabine and lightsaber training, which was a lot of fun. And it harks back to a little bit of Ben Kenobi and Luke Skywalker. It kind of felt like in the Master Apprentice kind of connection that Sabine's got with Ahsoka. And it's still a very frosty, difficult relationship, it feels.
Yeah, I mean, Sabine is a very proud individual, a Mandalorian who is accustomed to being the best at everything, looking for the biggest challenges and challenging herself to figure them out first or be the best at them. And she's really struggling with this. So this is completely out of her comfort zone, but it's fun to see that she's willing to go after it. And she's accepting that, yeah, you know what? I'm in over my head, but I'm going to keep going after this. And with Hu Yang, with the extra arms coming out so that she has all the different areas to aim towards, how cool. And seeing how that's tracking, what a great way to incorporate older elements of the Jedi than through this droid and Ahsoka just kind of watching on and advising him like, oh, you don't want to do that yet. Let's hold off on this and that. And then Sabine is just ripped. Natasha works so hard that seeing her make the movements with the wooden sword, it is just great athleticism and control that she has.
Yeah. And, as I've mentioned, droids aren't my thing. And my criticism of them is that they often don't have a meaning in the storyline. And if you're a droid, you're programmed, and so you should stay on your function. And I actually think they deliver it perfectly with Hu Yang in that he's always talking about protocol, the Jedi protocol, and whether it fits in with the Jedi protocol. And you kind of think that's what a droid should be doing, because that's what a droid's programming should be. And he's fitted in so perfectly with the storyline, as you said. Obviously, ancient droid, he's been there and he's been teaching the Padawans lightsaber building, lightsaber training, and so he's fitted in perfectly to his function and his role in the storyline, and the delivery of the lines done in such a fun and intelligent way as well. And the scene kind of moved on, as you mentioned. They've kind of got the sticks. Sabine's kind of blindfolded, and she sort of goes through a very similar kind of experience that Luke experienced all the way back in A New Hope, which was a fun kind of callback, I thought.
Right. Yeah. As soon as her face was covered and she's like, oh, really? I'm going to do this in the dark. And there was a little bit of comedy to it, but there was also her frustration there. And Ahsoka basically saying, I'm not going to coddle you. This is how you have to learn.
Yeah.
So it's fun to see some of the tough love that both are giving, but then where Hu Yang is very deliberate and old school on things, Ahsoka does have that little bit of element of, you know what, we're not going to go in this direction yet. Let's work up to that.
Yeah, definitely. The action then cut across to the New Republic, which is interesting. They're still basing it around Home One and Hera being the general there, but they've started introducing the world building that the New Republic's trying to do at this point in time, and establishing their own Senate and their own rules. And Hera finds herself in front of the senators, appealing effectively for resources to pursue what she thinks is the priority. And it was an interesting scene. Once again, I kind of felt Hera had a very strong role and voice in developing the scene, and it's always great to see Mon Mothma as well.
Oh, Genevieve is unbelievable. As Mary Purdue was a guest on the Colby cast, talking about this episode as well, and she just gushed about Genevieve, and she owns Mon Mothma, and it makes you really care, and it makes you think towards Bloodline, the Claudia Gray novel.
Yeah.
But what stood out to me here the most was Senator Xiono and his son being Kaz from Star Wars Resistance.
Yeah.
And knowing he's making decisions now and saying, oh, what threat? We're fine. There's nothing to worry about. And these are all the same senators that will pay for it in later editions of Star Wars that have already been created.
Yeah. I guess the one disappointment was obviously he plays the senator of Hosnian Prime, and I kind of wanted to go maybe and discover a little bit more about that planet, because it becomes effectively the capital planet for the New Republic as well. So he kind of wanted to know, how was that selected? Was he manipulating things a little bit? Because you kind of got
Oh yeah.
the impression, not that nice a guy. So
Yeah, well, and her calling him out, like, did you fight in the war? Or you just sat back to see who would win.
yeah,
And what a wonderfully tense moment that sets up for, what I'll consider the good guys, and pointing out, like, hey, you know what? You're sitting up there in your silver towers right now, and you're not paying attention to what is actually going on. And then it ties so much into Mando season 3 and what Carson Teva was telling Tim Meadows' character, and was just like, there's something bigger going on here. We need to get ahead of this. So I love how it's ebbing and flowing throughout the different shows, and the heroes that we know we can count on are the ones that are bringing it up and basically being pushed away.
yeah,
Because all the Imperials took this oath, so of course they're on our side now.
yeah. The Republic sort of building storyline really interests me, and I would love to see it explored more on screen, but it kind of feels like it maybe belongs more in a novel where they can get slightly more in depth into it. But I love the idea that you're going to have planets that were always loyal to the Empire, then having to come back into the fold. How do you treat them? Like you mentioned, the comment that Hera made about where were you during the war? That's always going to be, were you not part of the rebellion? Did you just sit back? Did you play Switzerland's neutral role? Kind of idea. And it was something I mentioned last week's show when we were talking about the Empire, that the New Republic basically killed down the guy as soon as he shouted out, "Long live the Empire." And in that time period, you're trying to integrate the remnants of the Empire back into the New Republic, so it's kind of harsh that you can't even shout out in support of them. And or you get arrested because you were supplying them with goods and so on. So there's a lot of this odd kind of balance to be made for how do you establish a New Republic, integrate problems from the past as well. So yeah,
And that goes back to Hamilton, right?
Yeah,
and that the line from Hamilton, it's a lot harder to rule, or it's a lot harder to govern than it is to win the war.
Yeah, Mr. Newbold, a controversial comment perhaps. Carson, Hera, Mando think they'll be the Rangers of the New Republic. A good title for a film. I think they're going to avoid that title just so people don't go googling it and find out its connections to problems I think they've had with cast members, maybe. So I don't know.
I just hope they bring in Chasna Chaddock from Alphabet Squadron, if that is the case.
Yeah, definitely. Another character transitioning over from animation to live action for the first time was Jason. You're a big fan of the animated Star Wars work. So your first impressions here, because I think I've read a lot of comments about people not necessarily happy with changes in the look from the animated character to the live action one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that Jason had enough play to make it quite the same argument, or people being like, oh, they don't look the same. And that, that's going back to Cad Bane once again, of people saying like, well, he doesn't look anything like it.
Yeah.
The animation style versus how it's going to look in live action is going to be different. This looks fantastic. Jason looks great. The fact that he's out and his partner in crime is Chopper. I will not even pretend to call him a babysitter, because Chopper is probably causing more trouble than anyone else here.
Yeah.
And I'm all for that.
Definitely. I'm not sure if he's going to have a huge role in this series. I think it was just a nice moment to introduce him. I could be proven wrong. But I was having a conversation online with Rebecca Benjamin. He's a great age if you want to have him as a Jedi in the upcoming movie where Rey's forming a Jedi Academy. If he receives some form of Jedi training between now and then and he's still around, we'd be interested to bring him back at a much older age, I think. Mr. Newbold also suggesting getting him into the Skeleton Crew.
Yeah, I get him into the Skeleton Crew. It sets up where, does he get to train with Grogu at all? There are all these different ways that things could intersect right now. and I love the mystery of it and how it could potentially come together. With the Ghost Lego set, which I arrived in the mail the other day for me, it was cool to see the minifigs that came with that relative to this episode. So I won't say anything more than that. It's easy to go find and look for it. But it made me more excited about the episode. I had watched the episode, then the Lego arrived, and I was like, ooh, this is interesting. Who comes with this?
Okay. We'll wait and see what comes up in the next few episodes then. Mr. Newbold also asking a great question in the comments. Who's going to be the best teacher in this era, Ahsoka or Luke? It's interesting because neither of them have had full and proper training. So really you've got, I'm going to say it, I'll be criticised for it, these two characters masquerading as Jedi Masters who haven't had their training completed and had very basic minimal training to some extent. And Ahsoka, who walked away from the Jedi, of course, still referring to herself as being a master and taking on a Padawan. I was a little maybe surprised by that. I thought maybe she wouldn't want to use those titles anymore, that she'd had sort of that kind of clean break, and she may have been sort of in the same kind of situation as Balin is maybe, but on maybe the opposite side of the light from him, and he's maybe gone a little bit to the dark, she's gone to the light, but neither of them necessarily a Jedi anymore, but still associating themselves with the Order.
I'm so excited about the potential of Balin and Ahsoka just talking.
Yeah.
At some point. You know, I'm sure there's going to be some great lightsaber duels, but I want their thoughts to go back and forth of what they've experienced, where he came from, and what his story is. Obviously, with Hu Yang knowing who he is, there is some history there, but they lost track of where he was. So what happens in that element? And then Ahsoka, with her understanding, Luke tried to keep everything by the book as much as he could, or the sacred Jedi texts, where I don't know that Ahsoka's doing the same thing. She's trying to figure it out as she goes. And Sabine at this point may become the best teacher because she's going to teach Ahsoka, while being the hardest student, how to teach the appropriate way for a variety of audiences.
Yeah. Mark Mason making a very similar comment to you. I think neither have the Wales manuals to refer to, so they're doing their indie thing and making it up as they go along. And I'm actually fascinated by this. Obviously, Rey has the manuals now. When her film comes along and she's forming an academy, is her teaching and her way of being a Jedi going to be very significantly different from what we've seen in terms of Luke and Ahsoka, on the basis that she's going to be teaching them the way that people were taught many centuries prior? That I've always kind of looked at that with the Jedi that we've really seen in the prequels, for example, were very much politically aligned to the Galactic Senate. Controversial, maybe, being aligned to a political sort of organisation, regardless of whether it was the democratic one of the galaxy or not. It's always I always refer to the line Mace Windu makes, that he was arresting Palpatine on behalf of the Galactic Senate, right after the fact that the Galactic Senate have literally just voted in and given Palpatine all the powers. Yeah, purely arresting him because he's Sith, so have different political and religious effective point of view. So I've always found that line fascinating. So I've just always wondered about these books, whether do you take the Jedi in a slightly different tangent? Do you do it and present them in a slightly different way? Perhaps more in line with what we're seeing in the High Republic novels and comics. Very classic, almost samurai like warriors.
Well, yeah, and with Rey especially, her training started with Luke, but she finished it with Leia.
Yeah,
and Leia hadn't had the Leia got the training from Luke as well. So it's going to be interesting, those different dichotomies of teachers. Because think of any professor you had at university or college, or you had people teaching the same things. They have different styles, so you can learn it different ways.
Yeah, definitely. It's an interesting way. I would like to see them do something slightly different. I don't know what, but just something ever so slightly different.
Online learning instead of in the temple.
Yeah, definitely online learning. I'm not gonna. I physically went to the island in Ireland. I wouldn't go back. It was an amazing experience, but it was a tough place to get to. So definitely, if I was carrying on my training, it would be online. We had a great scene when we talk about teaching between Ahsoka and Sabine, and I've been fascinated by their relationship because I've not been someone that watched the animation. I don't know enough about the nuances of their relationship. I just have a general understanding of it. So like I've been kind of enjoying these scenes, and especially because Rosario's almost been a step back a little bit from her character to allow the other actors around her to it feels certainly got a higher profile in the show. It hasn't felt like it's been Ahsoka's show. It's very much been almost like a Rebels, like a team show almost to this juncture. And you got like a nice little scene where Ahsoka's effectively trying to teach Sabine sort of basics around use of the Force with a cup, which became very popular in social media. Everyone was talking about the cup this week. It's been one of the most popular characters in the series so far, apparently. And so Sabine struggling with the ability to connect with the Force, and Ahsoka trying to explain to her that everybody has the ability if they can connect with it. And
I love that she kind of put it in perspective for her a little bit in terms of, hey, just start small. You don't need to get it all at once. And Sabine, again, is someone who has, through everything that she's done that we learned through animation in those stories, is an overachiever and figures things out fast. So here's a challenge, and it isn't just a natural thing. It's something she really has to work at. And some people have natural skills in certain areas, but that doesn't mean you're going to have it everywhere. So it's fun to see. And the first, like the Ahsoka series posters that are coming out every week, the first one I saw of the teacup was just unbelievable that I saw on Instagram. So yeah. I hope that finds its way out there and actually gets printed a little bit, because I hope that ends up being an important character.
Yeah. Mark Newbold saying the cup needs to be sold at Celebration. It would probably sell out very quickly.
Yeah, that'll be gone quick.
There was a great scene just after this between Ahsoka and Hu Yan, who did what droids should do and insisted that Jedi protocol be followed, and Sabine wasn't ready and shouldn't be trained, which I really enjoyed. And Paul Naylor's asking an interesting question there. With the negativity labelled at Sabine from Ahsoka and Hu Yang being quite pointed, is there a chance we see Sabine turn to the dark side?
I think I don't believe so, just because she's kind of already gone through this by, again, in the animation, developing a tool that could kill Mandalorians, just because of the science challenge of it and wanting to figure it out, not realizing it was going to be weaponized against her people. But I feel like she's already gone through that arc in her character to understand right and wrong and where I need to be. Or maybe it's just I'm so biased because I'm such a big Sabine fan that it would break my heart if she went that way. But that is a fair question for Paul to ask. I'm just hoping I don't see it. And I don't think we will.
I wonder if we get an element of if she encounters Thrawn, and Thrawn's kind of got this promise that he can deliver Ezra to her, that they have a little play on can she be tempted by the dark side a little bit, and that I think that kind of connection and vibe would be interesting to explore. I don't necessarily are seeing her take up the option, but I can see her being tempted by it.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's kind of, again, from novelizations, that is Quinlan Voss and the path that he went through a little bit with Asajj Ventress and testing those things out. So I think it's always there. Like, we're always a decision away from being a different person, or at least giving a different vibe to the people who know us or the public at large based on one decision. So there's definitely good reality to Paul's question and the statement there. But I think Sabine is made of more, but she could be tempted based on wanting to help Ezra.
Yeah. Our group of rebels get the message from Hera that they're not going to get assistance from the New Republic, and so they head off themselves, effectively into battle, because immediately they encounter enemy spacecraft who waste no time on attacking, and as we see with Rock, Jimmy McCrossan asking who we think he could be. He keeps hearing rumours it's Kanan, but clearly it's not. I think Rock's going to end up being his own character. That's kind of my gut feeling.
Yeah, it's hard for me to think that it could be Kanan, and I've heard the same exact things or read the same things. I love when people are out there like, well, what if? Because it could be so many different things, but he could be his own character. He could be someone we know. He could be a clone of some nature. Maybe he's a Moff Gideon clone, right? After everything that Gideon was trying to do. I don't really believe that, but again, nothing's off the table until this helmet comes off.
Yeah. And I think we're going to learn it very soon, possibly as soon as the next episode. It just feels like it's building up a little bit to some kind of clarity. Sabine takes up the gun turret on the ship, and there's a nice sequence, fight sequence, featuring Shin as well, and great to see space action. I always think in Star Wars, never get enough. And Natasha was great in this scene. I thought I'd love the facial expression. I think she must have been having so much fun filming it, as the way I would describe it. And rebels kind of quickly identify this giant ring that they need to scan and uncover what it was, and the battle sort of commences. Morgan's watching on. Gun turrets are sort of fired on our rebels. It kind of, I guess, how would you describe it? It immobilizes their craft in some way, and a controversial scene, I think, not one I enjoyed, to be honest, was Ahsoka ventures out onto the wing of the craft, and as much as I loved what she was wearing, I thought it looked so much fun. I didn't like this sort of little spinny kind of thing that they did. And it just reminded me so much of the scene from The Last Jedi with Leia floating through the air, and it didn't work for me. And I just thought, oh, should they have someone out on the wing of a craft in the middle of space fighting with lightsabers, deflecting laser shots? And I just thought it just didn't work for me. I don't know what your thought was.
I was okay with it. I wasn't, no pun intended, I wasn't over the moon with it. But I enjoyed it. I appreciate it for what it is. It seemed much more Rebels animation. So I think that's where I'm willing to go and give that little bit of leeway with it, especially seeing how, even in the prequels, the droids were going out on the ship to protect it as they're leaving Naboo. And that's where R2-D2 becomes a hero first. but they're magnetized to the metal. So I'm imagining that this outfit has some sort of magnetization.
Yeah.
And that's why once she jumps apart at one point, she starts floating away more. So there are elements that allow this to occur. Ahsoka has had a spacesuit in the past in the Clone Wars as well. So it didn't go too far away for me. I was okay with it. But more important to me was before that even occurred, during the dogfight, and when Sabine's having trouble hitting anything, Hera asks her, "How can I help you? What can I do to make this better for you?" And I think that's that aha moment for the two of them, where Sabine's training is going to take a new level at this point, and we're going to get to see it probably right in these woods that they're at, that we end up in at the end of this episode.
Yeah. And Ahsoka kind of ends up a little bit adrift in space, but she recovers. She's back on the spacecraft with some nice flying from Sabine. And as you say, they head down to the planet. They manage to avoid... I still don't know what to call this group. I'm just going to call them the baddies. And as they're flying down through the clouds onto the planet, we hear some familiar noises, I think it's fair to say. And everybody relaxes to the noises, and then into sight comes the Purgles, which looked incredible on screen. I thought looked fantastic.
Oh, yeah. No, and it was... I love Rebels so much that for me, I had a relative reaction to the Purgle, probably that I did Luke Skywalker showing up in The Mandalorian, where I basically wanted to jump up and be like, "Oh my God, Purgle, they're here." Yeah. Just knowing what it can mean and how many different options. And I wrote about this a little bit for the Fantha Tracks group recap or reaction to the episode, but it brings that mysticism in. It brings that, hey, you know what? This ring that the baddies have may not be the only way that you can get to these other galaxies. So I think it's smart that the Purgle are already in there, and we'll see what happens. But just hearing the bellowing, seeing all of them together swimming through the air, it was a beautiful thing. And it was an exciting moment, especially for this Rebels fan.
Yeah. And our heroes managed to make it down to the planet. And as you mentioned, they managed to get into the forest, hide themselves in the forest. And they have the full scan. They know what they're up against to some degree. They know what the intentions are. Really, with it being effectively a giant hyperspace ring to go to another galaxy. So they kind of know what their target is. We're kind of sort of building towards what the plot is going to be for the next episode. And we end the episode with Balin effectively planning to go after them. So it feels we're going to get a very much high action good guys versus bad guys kind of episode next week, or this coming week.
Yeah, it seems like it happens so fast now, because once you make it to the weekend, then it's just like, oh, wait, we only have 2 days left, and it comes up on you so quick, and it is just, yeah. Paul, I see your note there with the space whales. Yeah, it probably doesn't mean that much yet, right? Hopefully it does, and hopefully they make such an impact that people want to go back and watch the animation. Yeah. Because I think that is just some of the best storytelling Star Wars has done.
I don't necessarily have the connection other people have to them because I don't watch the animated stuff. But to me, Star Wars has always had giant alien creatures in pretty much every film and every content. So I'm not against them being there. I think they could do better in explaining the Purgle's link to hyperspace, space lines. I think they could have explained that a little bit better than maybe they have in the series, so people understand, there's something special about where they are and why this giant hyperspace ring is being constructed here, and that's why the Purgles are in this part of the galaxy. So yeah, I think there could have been. I don't know how you would do it, but there's a better explanation as to who they are, what the intentions of them are.
I can imagine having kind of that MacGyver explanation at some point.
Yeah,
And I could really see it being Sabine explaining to everyone, here's what we have to do in order to harness the power in order to go catch this group that just left in a ship.
yeah.
You know, all of
It's
that is obviously speculation, but it sets up that they got introduced in an interesting way, but could still play a large role.
it's a difficult balance between explaining something and making something incredibly boring by having a character sit down and explain everything. And I guess there's a fine line between, I don't know what these are. They've called them Purgles. Let me jump on Wikipedia and find out what a Purgle is. You know, there's a fine balance there, I think. And so, yeah, I'm not against the way they've been introduced. I think it could have been a little bit better, but you know, interesting question from Mr. Newbold. Have to wonder if the Force works the same in the other galaxy. Does it even exist there, or did it come from there to the Star Wars galaxy? Everyone may be Force users over there. Midichlorians could be from that realm. All interesting points. Obviously, Thrawn in the novels in the past has always had creatures around him who were effectively holes in the Force, that dead spaces in the Force. And so yeah, it would surprise me if there wasn't some difference between our galaxy and, let's just call it, the other galaxy at the moment, that's significant. And yeah, that was the word I was looking for, Mr. Newbold. Always good there. Encyclopedia knowledge.
Yeah, no, we know Newbold is going to bring that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I would expect there to be some kind of impact from going from one galaxy to the other. There has to be something of significance, I think. Your overall feelings on the episode, then?
I enjoyed it. I think through the first 3 episodes, I think I've given the grade of a B+ to each of the 3. Where I love what they've done. There are some things where I'm like, okay, I can deal with that. But I felt like they've moved things forward, even if it's been a little slow. I love the dogfight, even if it's just showing off the evolution of the volume and the special effects.
Yeah.
The audio in this is just delicious and so sharp and so clean. And how the ships fly on everything. I know our buddy Luke from Star Wars Sessions, that was definitely one of his big things from Kenobi and some of the other shows, of just like, oh, it's really janky sometimes how these ships are taking off or coming in, and they are smooth as silk throughout all of these episodes right now.
Definitely. If you've enjoyed Ahsoka scene part 3, you can jump over at fathertracks.com. There's a big in-depth guide that Sander has written for us over there. You can also jump onto Father Tracks Radio on your podcaster of choice, where Mr. Newbold and Mr. Mulcaster go in depth into Time to Fly. Ross, yourself, you also, as well as writing for Father Tracks, you're also one of the voices over in Coffee with Kenobi, so everyone can check out the Coffee with Kenobi show over there. You've been in conversation talking about episode 3 with your co-presenters, Jen and Dan, so people can check that out as well. What's your expectations for the rest of the series? Have you got expectations? What do you want to see?
I want to see Dave Filoni take it to the place he's comfortable taking it, because I think he's writing the right story arcs on a lot of things. And I know that this is just another puzzle piece into that larger puzzle that he's getting to put together right now with the story group and with Favreau. eventually turning into his feature film.
Yeah.
So the idea of all these things coming together, and I try not to overthink it. I mean, I don't know that I can sleep well on Tuesday nights after watching this now, here in Middle America, but it becomes one of those things of, oh, so-and-so could be with so-and-so. Oh, this could work. Carson Teva with who? And then the Mando and Sabine, and so much to think about. I can't wait to see Thrawn, one of my favorite Star Wars characters of all. And interesting to see how, if Ezra and Thrawn have been together this whole time, is Ezra the same? Is Thrawn the same?
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing to me, is getting to see those two characters, and how, I mean, we already saw it with Zeb and the other guy from Rebels that I'm not coming up with, that was an ISB agent, Callus.
Yeah.
They were enemies that were stuck together and then found common ground. Can there be some of that with Thrawn and Ezra? And are the Imperials going to be disappointed in the Thrawn that returns? I think that's a possibility as well, especially based on the books.
Jimmy McCrossan in the comments there, what if Ezra turned to the dark side by Thrawn forcing him to do his bidding? And I think that's just, exactly the same kind of point you've made, that these characters could have changed the new galaxy that they're going to, could have changed them, and what impact has it had on them in a positive or negative kind of way. I feel Thrawn needs to do something significant if he comes back into the Star Wars galaxy to make him the big bad and the big villain. So it's going to be interesting to see what that is. I feel he needs to have some kind of very significant impact when he comes back. And yeah, there has to be something to do with Ezra to make it why they're expelling so much energy to get him back. And it's just, there has to be some kind of payoff, I think. So don't know what that is.
All those what ifs that now make Tuesdays so long. And I look forward to having so much to do at work on a Tuesday now, so that I can get that 8-9 hour chunk out of the way and then come home and watch the next episode a little bit later.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting. Feels like it's going to be a high conflict episode 4. Then Dave Filoni's back in the director chair as well for episode 5. So that feels that could be a real pivot moment in the series, as well. So I'm looking forward to it. It's been a slow build. I think it's surpassed the point where it has to have little nods to the animated series. It's now in the point. It's its own thing now. I don't think it's beholden to its past anymore, and it's become its own series now, following its 3rd episode. And I think it can really kick on from here. So I'm interested. I'm invested in the show a little bit more than I thought I would be, which is intriguing, I think.
And that's exciting to hear. Like, I love, a big Star Wars fan like yourself who hasn't paid as much attention to the animation, to slowly build into this, because I think these are just some of the best developed characters there have been. And we're getting over that speed bump that is introducing them into live action and watching them evolve in front of our eyes. And, how similar are they? How different are they? And there's so much room for them to move everywhere at this point.
Yeah. You're going to be back on the Coffee with Kenobi show, reviewing the rest of the series.
So it is, I was fortunate, Dan Zare, our good friend over at Coffee with Kenobi. So he invited Jen Sobchakchai and myself just to be his co-host for every single episode reviewing Ahsoka. So incredibly honored for that. The same way that I feel special wearing this shirt right now, and the fact that I get to write for Fantha Tracks there and spend time here with you right now, Brian.
Yeah, it's good. I've enjoyed listening to your thoughts so far. I look forward to listening in for the rest of the series as well. Good Morning Tatooine will be back next Sunday. Sanders joining me on the show next week. So we'll be going in depth into episode 4. We'll see what happens whether expectations are met or we're disappointed or they completely surprise us. It's been a pleasure having you on the show, Ross. And thank you to everyone in the comments as well. Appreciate getting your thoughts on the show and your questions as well. It always keeps it interesting. So, Ross, thank you very much.
This is the way.
This is the way. See you all next week, guys.
Keep up to date with the latest Star Wars news each and every day on FanthaTracks.com. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Tumblr, and Pinterest at FanthaTracks. And be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and follow FanthaTracks TV to be alerted to new content and to be a part of our live shows.